The observation deck overlooked 30 years of work. Research Director Kalmath stood before the holographic display, watching data streams flow across multiple screens. Every file, every recorded battle, every intercepted communication from humanity's expansion into the galaxy had been cataloged here. The Drelith Collective had invested 3 decades and countless resources into this single facility on Moon 447 Gray, all for one purpose: learning how to eliminate the human threat. Begin the presentation, Kalmath ordered. The hologram flickered. High Command appeared, 12 senior military leaders from across Drelith space. Their scaled faces showed little emotion, but Kalmath knew they were eager. After years of humanity pushing into what the Drelith considered their territory, after dozens of diplomatic failures and border skirmishes, they wanted solutions. Honored commanders, Kalmath began, we have completed our analysis. The human species can be defeated through calculated application of force combined with psychological manipulation. He pulled up combat footage from the border wars. Human soldiers moved across the screen, fighting Drelith forces on a disputed colony world. Observe their patterns. Humans are aggressive when threatened, but follow predictable tactical doctrines. They value individual life excessively, which creates exploitable weaknesses. Another display showed medical evacuation procedures. Their wounded become priority targets. When human medics respond to casualties, their combat effectiveness drops by 47%. They will risk entire squads to recover a single injured soldier. Field Commander Driss shifted uncomfortably near the back of the observation deck. He had seen actual combat against humans, unlike most of the research staff. Something about the presentation bothered him. Kalmath continued. Human psychology centers on emotional bonds. They form attachments to squad members, to commanders, to civilians. Break these bonds, and their morale collapses. Our kill doctrine exploits this weakness at every level. The hologram showed detailed charts. First, we target medical personnel. Humans become disorganized without them. Second, we use captured communications to spread fear and uncertainty. Third, we strike at civilian populations to divide their military focus. While the High Command leader spoke, her voice transmitted across light years. While their adaptability, humans have survived on a remarkably hostile homeworld. They show unusual resilience. Adaptation requires time, Kalmath replied smoothly. Our strategy involves overwhelming force applied before they can adjust. Additionally, our research shows that human resilience stems from hope. Destroy hope, and you destroy their ability to adapt. He pulled up biological data. Physically, they are unremarkable. Moderate strength, average durability, limited sensory range compared to most spacefaring species. They compensate through technology and aggression, but both can be countered with superior planning. Driss finally spoke. Director, with respect, how much of this research comes from actual combat data versus observation and captured files? Kalmath's scales rippled with annoyance. All data is verified and cross-referenced. We have studied every major human engagement from the past 20 years. The patterns are clear. I have fought humans, Driss said carefully. They don't always follow patterns. Sometimes your anecdotal experience is noted. Field Commander, Kalmath interrupted. However, our statistical analysis encompasses thousands of engagements. Individual variations don't invalidate the broader conclusions. The High Command seemed satisfied. Questions came about implementation timelines, resource requirements, and projected casualty rates. Kalmath answered each with confidence born from years of research. The presentation lasted 2 hours. As the holographic conference ended, Kalmath allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. His entire career had built toward this. The Drelith would finally have a comprehensive strategy for dealing with human expansion. No more inefficient skirmishes or diplomatic stalemates. They would know exactly how to break humanity's will to fight. Driss approached as the observation deck emptied. Director, no disrespect to your work, but I have concerns. Your concerns are premature, Kalmath replied. organizing data tablets. The methodology is sound. The methodology studies humans who are already fighting, Driss said. What about humans who aren't soldiers? What about their civilians, their scientists? They're all humans or potential combatants. Their culture glorifies violence and expansion. We've documented this extensively. Kalmath gestured to the archive surrounding them. Every behavior pattern, every tactical response, every psychological trigger is recorded here. We understand them completely. Driss looked out at the moon's barren surface through the observation window. I hope you're right. Hope is irrelevant. Data is absolute. The facility's alarm system suddenly activated. Proximity warnings flashed across multiple screens. Something had entered the moon's airspace without authorization. Report, Kalmath demanded that a technician's voice came through the communication system. Unknown vessel on collision course with the surface. Impact predicted 3 kilometers from this facility. Origin, scanning now. Signature matches, human design. Small transport class, possibly a rescue shuttle. Kalmath and Driss exchanged glances. The moon was technically in neutral space, positioned between human and Drelith territories. Occasionally ships passed through, but actual landings were rare. They're not slowing down, the technician reported. Impact in 40 seconds. They watched through the observation window. A streak of fire crossed the dark sky, burning bright against the stars. The vessel hit the moon's surface hard, throwing up a plume of dust and debris. Even from 3 kilometers away, they felt the vibration through the facility's foundation. Dispatch security teams, Kalmath ordered. I want survivors contained and brought here for questioning. And if there are no survivors, Driss asked, then we salvage their technology and data. Kalmath turned back to his screens, already interested. Either way, Field Commander, this is an opportunity. A chance to apply our research in a controlled environment. Driss headed toward the security station, gathering his team. As he left, he couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. 3 decades of research, thousands of analyzed engagements, comprehensive psychological profiles. Kalmath believed they understood everything about humans. But Driss had learned something during his combat service that no amount of research could capture. Humans were most dangerous when you thought you had them figured out. The security teams mobilized, moving toward the crash site across the moon's gray terrain. Whatever or whoever had survived that impact would soon be in Drelith custody. What none of them knew was that the crash would bring someone who matched none of their data. Someone who would force them to question every conclusion their research had reached. Someone who would make them understand how little they actually knew. The crash site still smoldered when the Drelith security team arrived. Twisted metal littered the gray moon dust, scattered across 100 meters. The human vessel had broken apart on impact, its hull torn open like fragile paper. Emergency lights flickered weakly inside the wreckage, casting red shadows across the debris field. Squad leader Thrall activated a scanner, checking for radiation and atmospheric contamination. Sight is stable. 2 life signs detected, both human. One is fading fast. His team of 8 soldiers spread out, weapons ready. They had trained for human contact. The research files said humans were aggressive when cornered, likely to fight even when outmatched. Thrall expected resistance. What he found instead confused him completely. The human knelt beside a larger figure lying in the dust. She wore torn medical clothing, the universal symbol for healers visible even through the dirt and blood. Her hands moved frantically across the injured human's chest, pressing down in a rhythmic pattern Thrall recognized as emergency cardiac compression. She looked up as the Drelith approached, their weapons trained on her. Her face was streaked with blood, both red human blood and the blue-green fluid that leaked from a gash on her own arm. Exhaustion lined her features, but her eyes held desperate focus. Please, she said in broken Galactic common, her accent thick. Help. Patient critical. Need medical supplies. Please. Thrall hesitated. According to their research, humans use deception frequently in combat situations. It could be a trap. Yet the woman made no aggressive moves. She didn't even stop her chest compressions, maintaining the rhythm even while speaking. Secure her. Thrall, order point 2 soldiers moved forward. The woman finally stopped the compressions, raising her hands slowly. Wait, he dies if I stop. Let me stabilize. Then I surrender. Please. Your surrender is not negotiable, Thrall replied. But he found himself signaling his soldiers to pause. The injured human's life signs were indeed fading. The research said humans valued their wounded. This seemed to confirm that data. Continue your treatment. My team will observe. The woman immediately returned to work. She spoke constantly, though Thrall wasn't sure if she was talking to them, to her patient, or to herself. Compound fracture, possible internal bleeding, definite concussion. Aaron, stay with me. I know it hurts. I know. She tore open the injured human's uniform, exposing a massive bruise across his chest. Her fingers probed carefully, professionally. 3 broken ribs, maybe 4. Punctured lunge. I need a chest seal. I need plasma. She looked around desperately at the crash debris. Thrall watched as she crawled to a nearby piece of wreckage, pulling out a battered medical kit. Most of its contents had spilled out during the crash. She gathered what she could find, working with an intensity that seemed almost frantic yet somehow controlled. Fascinating, came Kalmath's voice through Thrall's communicator. The research director was monitoring everything from the facility. She exhibits the predicted attachment to wounded. Note how she prioritizes the patient over her own safety. The woman found a sealed package, tore it open with her teeth. She applied some kind of adhesive patch to the injured human's chest, pressing it firmly in place. Okay, Aaron, that'll help you breathe. Stay still. Don't you dare quit on me. Squad leader, bring both humans to the facility, Kalmath ordered. This is an excellent research opportunity. We can observe human medical procedures and psychological responses under control conditions. Thrall signaled his team. They brought a containment stretcher, the kind designed for transporting dangerous specimens. The woman watched them approach, her body tensing. We will transport you both to our facility, Thrall explained. Your patient will receive stabilization. You have human-compatible medical equipment? She asked, hope flickering across her exhausted features. We have adequate resources. It wasn't entirely true. The facility had some basic medical supplies for various species, mainly for their own research staff. But Thrall found himself unwilling to tell this desperate healer that they probably couldn't save her patient. Something about her determination unsettled him. The soldiers loaded the injured human onto the stretcher. The woman stayed beside him, one hand on his shoulder. I'm here, Aaron. Right here. Not leaving you. They brought both humans back to the facility. Kalmath waited in the observation room, watching through reinforced glass as security personnel guided the humans into a containment cell. The cell had basic amenities and a small medical station with limited supplies. Place them both in the same cell initially, Kalmath instructed. I want to observe their interaction patterns. The woman immediately began working again once the door sealed. She ignored the Draelith watching through the glass, focused entirely on her patient. She moved the medical station closer, checking through its supplies with practiced efficiency. These are wrong, she muttered. This is for Draelith physiology, not human. Temperature regulators are calibrated wrong. Coagulants won't work on our blood chemistry. But she adapted. Thrall watched through the observation window as she modified equipment, adjusted dosages, and improvised solutions using whatever she could find. She worked through the night without stopping, monitoring her patient's vital signs constantly. Kalmath recorded everything. Observe the attachment behavior. She sacrifices her own rest and medical needs for the wounded soldier. This confirms our research about human psychological weaknesses. Driss joined them in the observation room around midnight. He said nothing, just watched the human woman work. She had cleaned the blood from her face, but hadn't treated her own injuries. Her hands shook from exhaustion, yet they remained steady when touching her patient. According to our profiles, human medics become combat ineffective when separated from casualties, Kalmath noted, making annotations on his data tablet. Tomorrow we will test this. We'll move the injured one to a separate cell and observe her psychological breakdown. She's kept him alive for 8 hours with inadequate supplies. Driss observed quietly. Our research predicted humans would demand proper resources or refuse to cooperate. She's operating on emotional attachment, not logic, Kalmath replied. It makes her predictable, exploitable. Around 3 in the morning, the woman finally allowed herself to rest. She sat on the floor beside the medical station, her back against the wall. But even in sleep, her hand remained on her patient's wrist, monitoring his pulse. Perfect specimen for our studies, Kalmath said with satisfaction. A human medical professional exhibiting all the documented weaknesses. We couldn't have asked for better research subjects. Driss continued watching the sleeping woman. Something bothered him about Kalmath's certainty. The research director saw confirmation of his theories. But Driss saw something else in the way she had worked, in the focus and determination she had shown, that he saw someone who had refused to give up despite impossible circumstances. Someone who had adapted and improvised and succeeded against significant odds. Someone who looked exhausted and fragile, yet had somehow kept another person alive through sheer will and knowledge. The research files classified human medics as non-combatants. Support personnel. Weak links in human military structure. Watching this woman sleep with her hand on her patient's pulse, Driss suspected the research might have missed something important. He just wasn't sure what yet. Prepare for scenario testing at dawn, Kalmath ordered. We'll begin with emotional stress protocols. Time to see how humans really respond when their attachments are severed. Driss nodded but didn't reply. Dawn would come in a few hours. He had a feeling things wouldn't go according to Kalmath's research. Dawn on Moon 447 gray meant nothing. The facility's artificial lighting shifted through programmed cycles, but outside remained the same eternal darkness punctuated by distant stars. Inside the observation room, Kalmath prepared his first test with the enthusiasm of a scientist about to confirm a long-held theory. Scenario 1 implementation begins now, he announced to the monitoring team. According to 30 years of research, human medics experience severe psychological distress when separated from patients under their care. We will document this response in real time. Driss stood near the back of the observation room, arms crossed. He had reviewed the scenario parameters. They seemed cruel to him, but Kalmath insisted this was necessary scientific inquiry. Understanding human weaknesses meant exploiting human attachments. The human woman still slept on the containment cell floor, her hand resting on the injured soldier's wrist. Security cameras showed her breathing deeply, finally getting the rest her exhausted body demanded. The soldier remained stable, his vital signs weak but steady. Execute separation protocol. Kalmath ordered Point 4 security personnel entered the cell quietly. They moved with practiced efficiency, lifting the stretcher containing the injured human. The woman stirred but didn't wake immediately. They had the soldier halfway to the door before her eyes opened. "Wait," she said groggily. Then, fully awake and aware, "Wait? Stop. Where are you taking him?" The security team didn't respond. They carried the stretcher through the door. The woman lunged after them, but the door sealed before she could reach it. She pounded on the reinforced metal. "Bring him back. He needs monitoring. His lung could collapse. Please." Kalmath leaned forward, watching intently. Note her immediate panic response. Elevated heart rate detected. This matches predicted behavior patterns exactly. The woman stopped pounding. She pressed her forehead against the door, breathing hard. For several seconds, she stood completely still. "Now we observe the breakdown," Kalmath said. Human medics without patience enter a state of purposeless anxiety. They become erratic, unfocused. Some research suggests they experience temporary loss of professional function. But the woman didn't break down. She stepped back from the door, looked around the cell with sudden sharp awareness. Her eyes moved systematically across every surface, every corner, every visible detail of her containment. "What is she doing?" one of the monitoring technicians asked. Driss moved closer to the observation window. "She's assessing." The woman walked the perimeter of the cell, running her hands along the walls. She examined the door mechanism, the ventilation grates, the lighting fixtures. She checked the medical station thoroughly, cataloging what remained after the security team had removed the stretcher and monitoring equipment. This wasn't predicted, Kalmath muttered, reviewing his data files. She should be emotionally compromised. Instead, she's conducting a tactical evaluation. The woman found the observation window, though it appeared as a mirror from her side. She looked directly at where the Dralith researchers stood watching, as if she knew they were there. "I know you're studying me," she called out. "I know this is some kind of test, but that man needs medical attention. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Let me see my patient." Her voice held steady. No tears, no hysteria, none of the emotional collapse Kalmath's research predicted. Remarkable composure, Driss observed. Perhaps the research data came from battlefield situations where medics were under active fire. This is different. The principle remains valid, Kalmath insisted. Separation from patients causes distress. We're simply seeing a delayed response. But the woman didn't show distress. She returned to the medical station and began organizing what little remained. She found a small toolkit, probably left behind accidentally by the security team. Inside were basic maintenance tools, nothing that should be useful to her. She examined each tool carefully. Asörmöl öjinsta, asörkitaster, al magnetic seal remover. She looked at the door mechanism again, then back at the tools. "Director," one of the technicians said nervously, "is the cell door a magnetic seal design?" Kalmath checked the schematics. "Yes, standard security configuration." "Why would that matter?" "She's a medical professional, not an engineer." The woman approached the door. She removed a panel near the lock mechanism, using the edge of the circuit tester as a makeshift screwdriver. Beneath the panel, magnetic coupling systems became visible. "Alert security," Driss said immediately. "She's attempting to escape." "Impossible, Kalmath replied." Medical personnel receive no training in security systems. Our research clearly shows. The woman applied the magnetic seal remover to the coupling. Something inside the door mechanism clicked. She pushed, and the door shifted slightly in its frame. Security alarms activated. The woman didn't panic. She grabbed supplies from the medical station, stuffing them into her pockets. Then she squeezed through the partially open door before security teams could respond. "How did she know our door systems?" Kalmath demanded, watching her disappear down the corridor on the security feeds. "She probably didn't," Driss said, already moving toward the security station. She understood magnetic coupling principles from medical equipment. Scanners, stabilization fields, containment systems. Medical technology uses similar mechanisms. Kalmath pulled up the facility layout on his display. "She's heading toward the medical wing, where we placed her patient." Security teams mobilized throughout the facility. 8 soldiers converged on the corridor leading to the medical wing. They found the woman moving quickly but carefully, checking door labels as she passed. "Stop," the lead soldier commanded, weapon raised. The woman raised her hands but didn't stop walking. "I need to reach my patient. He requires monitoring. His condition is critical. You will return to your cell." "No," she said it simply, without aggression. "I'm a doctor. That's my patient. I'm going to him." 3 soldiers moved to intercept her. She sidestepped the first, used some kind of pressure technique on the second that made his arm go numb, and ducked under the third. She didn't hurt any of them seriously, just incapacitated them enough to get past. The remaining soldiers hesitated, confused by her tactics. She didn't fight like their combat training prepared them for. She moved like someone who understood exactly where to apply pressure to cause temporary paralysis without permanent damage. She knows Dralith anatomy, Driss realized, watching the security feeds. From treating multiple species medically. She's using clinical knowledge as a weapon. The woman reached the medical wing and found her patient in a recovery room. She immediately went to him, checking his vital signs with her hands since no monitoring equipment was connected. "I'm here, Aaron," she said softly. "Sorry I'm late. Had to take the long route." Security teams surrounded the medical wing entrance, but Driss ordered them to hold position. He arrived personally, Kalmath following close behind. The woman had positioned herself between the door and her patient. She held a surgical tool in one hand, not threatening but ready. Impressive escape, Driss acknowledged. You moved through our facility like you understood its design. Hospitals, research stations, medical ships, the woman replied. After a while, emergency layouts look similar. Life support systems follow standard patterns. I just followed the logic. Kalmath stared at her, his scales rippling with agitation. You're non-combatant. Our research clearly categorizes medical personnel as support roles. Low threat assessment. Yet you disabled 3 trained soldiers. I'm a trauma surgeon, she corrected. I understand anatomy better than your soldiers understand combat. I know exactly where every nerve cluster sits, which pressure points cause paralysis, how much force breaks bone versus just causing pain. She gestured at the injured human behind her. I know 17 different ways to stop a heart. I know which arteries bleed out fastest. I know how long a brain survives without oxygen. Her eyes met Kalmatha's through the doorway. I spent 10 years learning how to save lives. That means I spent 10 years learning exactly how bodies fail. So yes, I'm non-combatant. I took oaths to do no harm. But I also know more about killing than most soldiers ever will. She lowered the surgical tool slightly. Difference is, I choose not to use that knowledge. Most days. Today, I'm protecting my patient. You decide which version of me you want to deal with. Silence filled the medical wing. Kalmath's certainty wavered for the first time in 30 years. His research had categories for human soldiers, human pilots, human commanders. Detailed profiles of human warriors and their predictable behaviors. But nobody had told him that human healers might be more dangerous than human fighters precisely because they understood death so intimately. Stand down. Driss ordered his security teams. Provide her with proper medical equipment. Let her work. Field Commander, this contradicts. Your research is incomplete, Director. Driss interrupted quietly. She just proved that. The woman relaxed slightly, though she didn't move from her protective position. Thank you. I just want to save him. That's all I've ever wanted. 3 days passed in tense equilibrium. The woman worked constantly in the medical wing, stabilizing her patient with the equipment Driss had authorized. She slept in brief intervals, always within sight of the monitoring displays. The injured soldier's condition improved slowly, moving from critical to merely serious. Kalmath spent those same 3 days reviewing every file in his research database. 30 years of compiled data, thousands of combat analyses, comprehensive psychological profiles. He searched desperately for where his conclusions had failed. The woman should have been predictable, controllable. Instead, she had turned his entire facility into her territory without firing a single shot. She's fortified the medical wing, a security analyst reported during the morning briefing. Sealed 3 access points, rerouted environmental controls to her monitoring station, and positioned emergency medical supplies at strategic intervals. Driss examined the facility schematic. The woman had indeed claimed the entire wing. Anyone wanting access now had to pass through corridors where she had clear sight lines and control over atmospheric conditions. How did she accomplish this without our security systems detecting hostile activity? Kalmath demanded. Because she didn't do anything hostile, Driss replied. She made safety improvements, better air filtration for her patient's recovery, secure doors to prevent contamination, organized supplies for efficient emergency response. Everything she did falls under standard medical protocols. She's manipulating us. She's protecting her patient using the resources we gave her. Driss turned from the schematic. Director, we need to acknowledge that our understanding of human medical personnel was fundamentally flawed. Kalmath's scales darkened with frustration. One individual doesn't invalidate decades of research. One individual has held territory against our entire security force for 3 days without violence. I think that invalidates something. The research director pulled up combat footage from the border wars. Look at this. Human medics in battlefield conditions. They evacuate wounded and retreat. They don't establish defensive positions. They certainly don't fortify facilities and control territory. Those medics had military support and evacuation options, Driss countered. She has neither. She adapted to her circumstances. Humans don't adapt this quickly. Our research shows their response patterns are based on humans who were already soldiers. Driss interrupted. You studied warriors fighting wars. She's a healer protecting a patient. Different motivation entirely. Kalmath began formulating a response, but High Command's communication request interrupted him. The same 12 leaders who had attended his presentation 3 days ago now demanded an update. Research Director, the senior commander's voice carried disapproval across the holographic link. We received your reports about the human situation. Explain how a single unarmed medical professional has occupied part of your facility. Kalmath felt his career collapsing. The individual demonstrates unusual capabilities not reflected in our standard human profiles. However, I have developed a solution. Final Solution Protocol will... What is Final Solution Protocol? Driss asked sharply. Overwhelming force, Kalmath explained. 30 soldiers, full tactical gear, coordinated assault on the medical wing. Our research shows humans break under superior numbers. She will surrender when faced with inevitable defeat. Or she'll fight, Driss said, and people will die. She's one individual. Non combatant. The numbers heavily favor. Numbers mean nothing if she's willing to use her medical knowledge as a weapon. Driss turned to the holographic high command. Honored leaders, I request permission to negotiate with the human directly. Negotiation shows weakness, Kalmath protested. The research clearly indicates your research failed, Director, the senior commander said coldly. Field Commander Driss will handle this situation. You will observe and document where your analysis proved incorrect. The hologram disconnected. Kalmath stood in stunned silence while Driss headed toward the medical wing. The research director followed, tablet in hand, professionally documenting his own failure. They found the woman at her patient's bedside, adjusting medication levels on the monitoring equipment. She looked exhausted but alert. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her injured arm showed signs of infection she hadn't properly treated. Dr. Natalie Reed, Driss said, reading from the identification they had pulled from the crashed vessel. May I enter? She gestured permission. You're the one who countermanded the assault order. I appreciate that. How did you know about the assault order? I've been monitoring your communication frequencies. Your security protocols are decent, but not perfect. Also, you mobilized 30 soldiers 3 hours ago. Didn't take genius to figure out why. Kalmath made notes on his tablet. Another capability unaccounted for in the research data. Driss approached slowly, keeping his hands visible and non-threatening. We need to resolve this situation. You cannot remain in our facility indefinitely. I know. Natalie checked her patient's breathing, satisfied with what she saw. Aaron's stable enough for transport now. Arrange safe passage to human space, and we'll leave. Simple solution. High Command wants to understand what happened here first. You've challenged many assumptions we held about your species. I'm just a surgeon. I fix broken bodies. That's not complicated. You've done considerably more than that, Driss observed. You escaped containment, disabled security personnel, fortified this wing, and held position against military forces, all while maintaining that you're non-combatant. Natalie was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried weight that came from years of trauma surgery. You want to understand what happened? I'll tell you. You studied the wrong humans. She gestured at the observation equipment surrounding her patient. You researched warriors, people who already chose violence as their profession. You learned their tactics, their psychology, their breaking points. All useful information, I'm sure. But you didn't study people like me. People who chose healing. People who see death every single day and fight against it. People who understand exactly how fragile life is. She met Driss's eyes directly. I know things your warriors don't. I know that the Dralith respiratory system has a weakness in the left thoracic cavity where the primary breathing chamber connects to secondary lung tissue. Sharp trauma there causes catastrophic failure. Kalmath looked up sharply from his tablet. I know your nervous system clusters in 3 main points along your spine. Precise strikes to those clusters cause permanent paralysis. I know which of your major arteries are closest to the skin surface, easiest to sever for rapid blood loss. She moved to Aaron's other side, adjusting his pillow. I know 17 different ways to stop a Dralith heart. Blunt force trauma to the dual chamber valve. Injection of certain compounds that disrupt your electrical impulses. Pressure on the vagal nerve that triggers cardiac arrest. Why are you telling us this? Driss asked quietly. Because I also know how to restart that heart. How to repair damaged lung tissue. How to stabilize someone bleeding out from severed arteries. How to reverse paralysis if treatment begins quickly enough. She touched Aaron's shoulder gently. I know death intimately because I've fought it for 10 years. Every surgery where someone died on my table taught me exactly how bodies fail. Every patient I saved taught me exactly what keeps people alive. Natalie looked at both Dralith observers. So here's what you didn't account for in your research. You assume people who choose healing are weak. That we avoid violence because we can't handle it. Wrong. We avoid violence because we understand it better than warriors do. A soldier knows how to kill efficiently. A surgeon knows how to kill precisely. We just choose not to. Most days. She gestured around the medical wing. I fortified this position because protecting my patient is my purpose. I disabled your soldiers without killing them because I could. I took control of this wing because you gave me the tools and I understood how to use them. But here's the important part, Natalie continued. I did all of this while hating every second. I took oaths to do no harm. Breaking those oaths, even defensively, hurts me in ways your research probably can't measure. I would rather die than kill someone. However, her voice hardened, I would absolutely kill to protect my patient. Not happily, not easily. I would hate myself for it, but I would do it. And that self-hatred would make me more dangerous, not less, because I'd want it finished quickly. Driss processed this carefully. You're saying humans who choose peaceful professions are more dangerous than warriors when forced to violence. I'm saying we understand the stakes better. Warriors accept that they might kill or die. That's their profession. But healers? We know exactly what death looks like. We've held hands with it. We understand the permanent finality of it. She checked Aaron's vital signs one more time. When healers fight, we don't fight for glory or duty or territory. We fight because every other option failed. And we fight with complete knowledge of what we're doing. Kalmath finally spoke. Our research never considered this perspective. No, Natalie agreed. You studied humans who already embraced violence. You never studied humans who rejected it until forced. Different psychology entirely. Silence filled the medical wing. Somewhere in the facility, 30 soldiers waited for assault orders that would never come. The standoff entered its fourth day. High Command demanded answers, but Kalmath had none that satisfied them. His research remained thorough and accurate for what it covered. The problem was everything it didn't cover. Driss returned to the medical wing regularly, bringing supplies Natalie requested and engaging in careful conversations. She remained professional but guarded, always positioned between visitors and her patient. Aaron showed continued improvement, regaining consciousness for brief periods though still too weak to move without assistance. Director Kalmath wishes to speak with you, Driss said during one visit. He has questions about his research failures. Natalie adjusted Aaron's intravenous medication. I'm not interested in helping him kill humans more efficiently. I don't think that's his goal anymore. I think he genuinely wants to understand where his analysis went wrong. His analysis went wrong when he decided humans were just problems to solve. She checked the monitoring displays, satisfied with the readings. But fine, he can ask his questions. I'll decide which ones to answer. Kalmath entered cautiously an hour later. The research director looked diminished somehow, his earlier confidence replaced with scientific uncertainty. He carried his tablet, but held it loosely, as if the data it contained had lost meaning. Dr. Reed, he began formally. Thank you for agreeing to this conversation. You're welcome. But I'm doing this because Field Commander Driss asked, not because I care about your research. Kalmath absorbed the verbal blow without reaction. Fair enough. My first question involves your statement about humans who choose healing. Can you elaborate on what percentage of your species falls into this category? Natalie considered the question. Actual medical professionals? Maybe 2% of our total population. But people who choose professions focused on building rather than destroying? Engineers, teachers, farmers, artists, scientists working on peaceful applications? Probably 70% or more. 70%, Kalmath repeated, making notes. Our research focused almost exclusively on your military forces. Perhaps 5% of your population. You studied the exceptions and thought you understood the rule. Yes, exactly that. The admission clearly cost him something. Our projections assumed human civilization prioritized military expansion and conquest. The border wars supported this conclusion. The border wars happened because we expanded into space and bumped into species who were already there, Natalie corrected. Most humans just want to live peaceful lives. Grow food, raise families, create things. The warriors exist to protect that, not the other way around. Driss observed the exchange with interest. Kalmath was actually listening, truly hearing information that contradicted his life's work. Second question, Kalmath continued. You stated that healers understand death better than warriors. Can you explain this distinction? Natalie pulled up a chair, finally sitting after hours on her feet. Warriors train to cause death. They learn efficient methods, tactical applications, strategic implementations. Death is their tool. But surgeons? We see death constantly. Every surgery where we lose a patient teaches us exactly how bodies shut down. What fails first, what follows, how quickly it happens. We see in slow motion. We try desperately to prevent it. And sometimes we can't. She rubbed her eyes, exhaustion showing through. I've held a human heart in my hand and felt it stop beating. I've watched brain activity cease on monitors while the person's family waited outside. I've made decisions about who gets treatment first, knowing the others will probably die. That's not abstract knowledge. It's visceral, immediate, personal. Kalmath listened without interrupting. Driss noticed the research director had stopped taking notes, simply absorbing information. Warriors know they might kill, Natalie continued. Surgeons know we might fail to save someone, which feels different. We internalize those deaths. Carry them. I remember every patient I lost. Their names, their faces, exactly what went wrong. So when someone forces me into a situation where I might have to kill intentionally, I'm not approaching it like a warrior approaching a familiar task. I'm approaching it like a surgeon who has to make the worst decision possible. Would that not make you hesitate? Kalmath asked. Less effective in actual combat. You think so? But hesitation in surgery kills people. We train ourselves to make critical decisions instantly. Assess, decide, act. No time for doubt during emergency procedures. Natalie gestured at Aaron. When he came in with a collapsed lung and internal bleeding, I had maybe 90 seconds to prioritize treatments. Hesitation meant death. I didn't hesitate. Same principle applies to defending him. If someone threatens my patient, I won't hesitate. I'll just hate what I have to do. Kalmath processed this information carefully. Our kill doctrine assumed humans telegraph their violence. Show aggression before attacking. You showed none of these indicators. Because I wasn't being aggressive. I was being professional. Natalie checked Aaron's breathing, noting his improvement. Aggression is emotional. What I did was clinical. Assess the threat, identify the solution, implement it. Just like surgery. That's terrifying, Driss observed. It should be. People who kill emotionally make mistakes. People who kill clinically don't. The medical wing fell quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of monitoring equipment. Kalmath finally set his tablet aside completely. Dr. Reed, I need to ask something that's not about research. It's personal curiosity. Go ahead. Why did you stay? After the crash, you could have tried to escape. Find another human ship, send distress signals, anything. Instead, you stayed with one dying soldier. What? Natalie smiled slightly, the first genuine smile Driss had seen from her. You really don't understand humans at all, do you? Clearly not. Aaron isn't one dying soldier. He's Aaron Webb. He's a person. He has a daughter named Sophie who draws pictures of stars and wants to be an astronaut. He coaches youth sports on weekends. He tells terrible jokes that make his whole squad groan. She touched Aaron's hand gently. He matters, not because he's particularly important in some grand strategic sense, just because he's a person and every person matters. That's the part your research missed completely. You studied humans as if we're all interchangeable units in some military calculation. But we're not. Every single person is someone's child, someone's friend, someone's reason to keep going. I stayed because Aaron is my patient and my responsibility. Because he trusted me to keep him alive. Because his daughter deserves to see her father again. Because he matters. Kalmath stood silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice held something new. Not quite emotion as humans understood it, but recognition of fundamental error. I have studied your species for 30 years. I cataloged every tactical doctrine, every combat engagement, every strategic pattern. I compiled comprehensive data on human military capabilities. But I never asked the simple question, why do humans fight? We fight because what we're protecting matters, Natalie answered. Not territory or resources or political ideologies. People, individuals, every single one of them irreplaceable. Your kill doctrine assumed we value life excessively as a weakness. You were half right. We do value life excessively. But that's not weakness. That's exactly what makes humans dangerous when threatened. Because we're not fighting for abstract concepts. We're fighting for Aaron's daughter Sophie. For families and friends and strangers we haven't met yet, but who still matter. For the idea that every person deserves a chance to live. Driss found himself reassessing everything he knew about humans. The border wars suddenly looked different. Not expansion for resources, but protection of colonies full of individuals, each one mattering to someone. You're more dangerous than we realized, Kalmath said quietly. Not despite your compassion, but because of it. Finally, Natalie replied, you're starting to understand. Aaron stirred on the medical bed, his eyes opening briefly. Nat, you still here? Right here, Aaron. Not going anywhere. Good. Sophie needs you to make sure I get home. Already working on it. Rest now. Aaron's eyes closed again, but his breathing remained steady and strong. Natalie checked his vital signs. Nodding with satisfaction, Kalmath picked up his tablet. I need to inform High Command that our entire strategic framework requires revision. 30 years of research, fundamentally incomplete. One more thing, Director, Natalie said as he prepared to leave. Your research focused on killing humans. Maybe next time research how to talk to us instead. You might find we're reasonable when approached with respect. Noted, Dr. Reed. Duly noted. The facility's communication center buzzed with activity as Kalmath prepared his report to High Command. Driss stood beside him, reviewing the final assessment before transmission. The document represented the complete dismantling of 3 decades of research, but it also represented something more important, truth. This will end my career, Kalmath said without emotion. High Command invested enormous resources based on my analysis. Fleets positioned, strategies developed, entire military doctrines built on fundamentally flawed assumptions. Better to discover the flaws now than during actual war, Driss replied. Dr. Reed probably saved thousands of lives on both sides. By being herself, by simply protecting her patient. Kalmath activated the transmission sequence. The irony is overwhelming. The holographic conference assembled quickly. The 12 High Command leaders appeared, their expressions demanding answers. The senior commander spoke first, her voice sharp with impatience. Research Director, your preliminary reports suggest complete revision of our human threat assessment. Explain. Kalmath straightened, accepting responsibility. Honor Commanders, our 30-year research program successfully analyzed human military forces. Our kill doctrine remains valid for engaging human warriors in combat. However, this represents approximately 5% of human civilization. He pulled up comparative data. We failed to analyze the remaining 95%. Humans who choose peaceful professions. Builders, healers, educators, creators. We assumed these individuals were non-threats. This assumption was catastrophically wrong. A single medical professional occupied part of your research facility, another commander observed. How does one individual invalidate comprehensive research? She didn't invalidate the research. She exposed its limitations. Kalmath displayed footage of Natalie escaping containment, fortifying the medical wing, holding position for 4 days. This human possesses no military training. She's a trauma surgeon, yet she demonstrated capabilities our research never predicted. We studied humans who embrace violence. We never studied humans who reject it until forced. The psychological difference is fundamental. Driss stepped forward. Honor commanders, permission to add field observations. Granted, Field Commander. I have fought human warriors. They're aggressive, tactical, predictable within certain parameters. Dr. Reed is none of these things. She's methodical, precise, and driven by protection rather than conquest. When human warriors fight, they follow doctrine. When human healers fight, they apply medical knowledge as weapon. They know exactly where to strike, how much force to apply, which systems to target for maximum effectiveness. One of the commanders leaned forward. Are you suggesting human medical personnel are more dangerous than their soldiers? In specific contexts, yes. They fight with complete understanding of what they're doing. No hesitation, no emotion, just clinical application of deadly knowledge. More importantly, Driss continued, they're motivated differently. Warriors fight for duty or orders. Dr. Reed fought because her patient mattered to her personally. That level of individual attachment creates commitment that our research never accounted for. The senior commander studied the data thoughtfully. What does Dr. Reed want? Safe passage to human space with her patient, Kalmath answered. Nothing more. She never asked for concessions or advantages. She just wants to save one person and go home. One person out of billions. Why does this individual matter so much to her? Because to humans, every individual matters that much. Kalmath pulled up his interview notes. She explained that humans don't view their species as collective units. Each person is irreplaceable, unique, valued. She stayed with a dying soldier not because he's strategically important, but because he's a person with a daughter who needs him. That's how humans think. The observation room fell silent. High Command processed information that challenged their entire understanding of human civilization. So human compassion isn't weakness, the senior commander concluded. It's why they fight so effectively when threatened. Correct. They're not protecting abstract concepts. They're protecting individuals who matter to them. That makes them more dangerous, not less. Another commander spoke. Research Director, what is your recommendation? Kalmath took a breath. Abandon the kill doctrine entirely. Open diplomatic channels. Humans are reasonable when approached with respect. Dr. Reed said this directly, and our experience with her confirms it. She could have killed multiple security personnel. She chose incapacitation instead. She could have demanded resources or advantages. She only asked for what her patient needed. She demonstrated restraint at every opportunity. But she also demonstrated capability. If we force humans into war, we won't be fighting just their warriors. We'll be fighting teachers who understand psychology, engineers who understand infrastructure vulnerabilities, doctors who understand biological weaknesses. We'll be fighting an entire civilization that values every individual life and possesses comprehensive knowledge of how to protect or end those lives. The commanders conferred privately, their holograms muting. Kalmath and Driss waited. The research director's career hung in balance, but neither seemed particularly concerned about personal consequences anymore. The senior commander reactivated communication. Research Director, your honesty is noted. High Command accepts your revised assessment. We will initiate diplomatic protocols with human government. Regarding Dr. Reed, provide her with transportation, medical supplies, and safe passage to human territory. Extend formal apology for her detention. Additionally, inform her that her actions here prevented war between our species. She should know this. Yes, she demonstrated what peaceful cooperation with humans could achieve. Let her understand the significance. The hologram conference ended. Math slumped slightly, relief evident in his posture. I expected removal from command at minimum. Truth has value, Driss replied. You provided it. That matters. They found Natalie in the medical wing, helping Aaron sit upright for the first time since the crash. The soldier looked weak but alert, managing a smile despite obvious pain. Lieutenant Webb, Driss greeted him. Welcome back to consciousness. Thanks. Natalie tells me she's been keeping me alive through sheer stubbornness. That's accurate, Natalie confirmed. Also medical skill, but mostly stubbornness. Kalmath approached carefully. Dr. Reed, High Command has authorized your release. We'll provide transportation, full medical supplies, and safe escort to human space. When? Immediately, if you wish. Natalie looked surprised. Just like that? No more tests or research observations. No more tests. You've taught us everything we needed to learn. Kalmath paused, choosing words carefully. I must tell you something. Our research facility existed to develop strategies for war with humanity. Kill doctrines designed to exploit weaknesses and maximize casualties. Aaron tensed, but Natalie remained calm. I figured that out around day 2. Your questions were too specific for casual scientific interest. Your presence here, your actions, demonstrated why such strategies would fail catastrophically. High Command has abandoned war planning in favor of diplomatic engagement. You prevented a conflict that would have killed thousands on both sides. I didn't do anything except protect my patient. Exactly. You demonstrated human nature at its core. Not warriors seeking conquest, but individuals protecting what matters. High Command understands now that war with humanity means fighting billions of people like you. People with knowledge, capability, and personal motivation. That's a war we would lose. Natalie helped Aaron adjust his position, ever the physician focused on her patient. You're smarter than most. Some species only learn this lesson after the fighting starts. We had an exceptional teacher. Kalmath offered what might have been a Drelith gesture of respect. Thank you, Dr. Reed, for your restraint, your honesty, and your demonstration of human values. You're welcome. Can we leave now? Aaron needs proper hospital care, and I need sleep that doesn't involve monitoring equipment. Driss arranged transportation within hours. A Drelith diplomatic vessel would carry them to the nearest human outpost, accompanied by formal communications opening dialogue between governments. The medical wing was carefully packed, supplies loaded for Aaron's continued recovery. Before departing, Natalie stood at the observation window, looking out at the moon's barren surface. Driss joined her, respectful silence between them. What will you do now, she asked. Help implement new protocols. Train our people to see humans as potential allies rather than threats. Learn from our mistakes. Good, because humanity's still expanding into space. We'll keep bumping into other species. Better to figure out cooperation now. What about you? Natalie smiled. Get Aaron home to his daughter. Return to my hospital ship. Keep fixing broken bodies. That's all I ever wanted to do. You accomplished much more than that. I just did my job, protected my patient. Everything else was you learning what humans are actually like. The transport shuttle arrived. Medical personnel carefully transferred Aaron aboard, Natalie supervising every movement. She boarded last, turning back for final words. Director Kalmath, she called out. Next time you research humans, try talking to us first. You'll find we're happy to explain ourselves. Saves everyone a lot of trouble. Noted, Doctor. Safe travels. The shuttle lifted off, carrying 2 humans back toward their territory. Kalmath and Driss watched it disappear into the darkness between stars. 30 years of research, Kalmath said quietly. Invalidated by 4 days with 1 human doctor. Not invalidated. Corrected. You still understand human warriors. Now you also understand everyone else. The ones who matter more. Exactly. They returned to the facility, already preparing reports that would reshape Drelith strategy. High Command would study Dr. Natalie Reed's actions for years, learning what Kalmath had learned. Humans were dangerous not despite their compassion, but because of it. Somewhere between the stars, Natalie sat beside Aaron's medical bed, finally allowing herself to rest. Her patient was safe, heading home. Her duty was complete. She had been a healer, a protector, and briefly a teacher to an entire species. But in her mind, she had just done what any decent person would do. She had protected someone who mattered. That was enough.